Did you know that licensed games can often be bad? It's true. While you pick yourself up off the floor, it's time for me to prove that the PlayStation 2 actually had quite a few licensed games that were some of the best games across the whole system. You'll have to speak up in the comments today though, I'm wearing a towel. Me not mention hit and run? That's impossible. The Simpsons' history with video games as a whole has been spotty at best. While the arcade beat 'em up was pretty good, along with the Treehouse of Horror Game Boy games, you also had some big misses like the Simpsons wrestling and skateboarding, and also arguably the unashamed Crazy Taxi ripoff that was Road Rage. I don't know, that one, I'm quite fond of it. When Radical Entertainment and Vivendi Universal announced Hit and Run, this time cribbing from Grand Theft Auto,
which was the style at the time,
expectations were lower than Mayor Quimby's approval rating, but The Simpsons Hit and Run turned out to be a perfectly cromulent game, and that's putting it lightly. Even though the GTA inspiration is clear as day, with players controlling one of the members of the core family, plus a poo for some reason, exploring sections of Springfield and completing missions assigned by other characters, Radical took steps to ensure that Hit and Run's take on GTA was more than just Poochie returning to his home planet in terms of efforts, along with the constant barrage of golden era level jokes and great voice performances from the not yet 80 years old cast. Please retire soon, it's getting sad. Hit and Run is basically the de facto Simpsons game. Just sit back like Homer in the massage chair and enjoy one of the best licensed games ever made. Now, here's Devil May Cry for the real sickos. If you're like most millennial ex-emos who watched The Nightmare Before Christmas and decided to make it a key part of your personality, you probably already know that Jack Skellington and the gang appeared in Kingdom Hearts 2 for a spell. It's a wild section of the game, but what's even wilder is that Jack Skellington's own licensed game for the PS2 is a thing that actually exists. It's basically the perfect game for a Nightmare fan too. The only thing missing is a pair of these included in the case. Titled The Nightmare Before Christmas, Oogie's Revenge, what's wild about this game is that it was developed by Capcom, specifically members of the Devil May Cry team. The results are exactly what they sound like. So yeah, okay, anyone picking up Oogie's Revenge expecting to play as Jack Skellington and start performing moves like Stinger, Royal Guard and Table Hopper is probably going to be a bit disappointed, but as baby's first Devil May Cry game, you can't really go wrong here. There's style switching, combo meters and secret missions to find, and even the in-game menus look like a reskinned version of DMC3's menus. As for the story, Jax left Halloween Town to find inspiration for next year's festivities, leaving Oogie Boogie to be resurrected and run amok. Queue 20+ levels with new music and voice acting for all characters, and Halloween Town is yours. The world too, maybe. Considering that Al Pacino Scarface film pretty definitively ends with the titular drug lord being riddled with more lead than me after my 18th pencil snacky snack of the day, Radical, who you might remember from Hit and Run, had to put their thinking caps on when pitching their tie-in license game Scarface The World Is Yours on PS2. So what was their solution? Well, that was to sack off the film's original ending entirely, with Tony Montana somehow surviving the climactic fight in the mansion, albeit with a few bullet holes for his troubles. 3 months of rest, recuperation, and probably thinking weird thoughts about his sister later, Big Tone returns to Miami to find that it's been taken over by former associate Sosa, with Tony resolving to reclaim the world and everything in it. Again inspired by GTA, particularly the success of Vice City, which owes much of its charm and vibes to Scarface itself, The World Is Yours sees you building your criminal empire by procuring and selling drugs, taking over districts and committing wanton destruction on anyone standing in your way. The way you build your empire, taking over districts and completing supply runs of drugs and cash is a lot more involved than other open world games, while the combat is fast and violent like it should be for a Scarface game. It does have some rough edges, and the frame rate is, let's be honest here, not good, but you can taunt your enemies to fill a balls meter, allowing you to unleash rage and gun down everyone in front of you. 10 out of 10 would get high on this supply.
Those blades cut.
The Lord of the Rings film trilogy was huge during the PS2 era, and so was I as a fat little child, so naturally licensed games were to follow. Pretty much all of them retold the events of the films in some way, but the best of the best remains Return of the King. Seriously, I made Sam look anorexic. Despite being called Return of the King, this hack and slasher includes events from the Two Towers, going from the Battle of Helm's Deep all the way to the climactic fight and the struggle atop Mount Doom. Unlike the game based on the Two Towers, players in Return of the King actually have the ability to choose between 3 separate paths: Wizard, King, and Hobbits, which determines the characters you play as throughout the game. While each character has the same basic abilities, everyone has their own unique abilities and attributes that can be upgraded as you go, along with fellowship upgrades that make all characters stronger. It also still looks and sounds amazing for a PS2 game, even 20 years on. And you try and tell me those awesome transitions from movie scenes into in-game cutscenes doesn't make you go a bit... For a relatively simple hack and slash game, there's a shocking level of depth and budget here, but here's the thing. Here is the thing about the thing. It's pretty good, as many people have found out recently thanks to the HD re-release courtesy of Night Dive. Even if the game version of The Thing turned what was a cerebral body horror experience into a more action-oriented survival horror game, the licensed offering manages to retain a lot of the themes, ideas and even tone of the film with its mechanics and gameplay. Having a squad-based shooter in a property where there's a shape-shifting alien, that's just money on the table as far as games are concerned. Following the events of the 1982 film, which somehow miraculously stands up so well, it's like 40 years old and it looks great. Anyway, The Thing, the game, sees an American team investigating the Arctic outpost from the movie, finding the body of Childs while MacReady is nowhere to be found. Before long, things start appearing and people start being body snatched, which makes managing a squad a lot more challenging. Not only can any of your squad mates be a secret thing waiting to assimilate you, but your squad can also lose trust in you if you refuse to fight enemies or lead them into danger. Trust with AI partners in video games is usually a one-way street, so to have players be punished for treating AI squad mates as disposable is actually genius, though obviously there are some issues with 2-decade-old AI, but nothing that takes away from the game overall. It is a bit short, but, you know, short and sweet and all that. Now, can Night Dive do anything with this next game? For a series set in a simulated world where you can download Kung Fu into your noggin, you'd reckon that there'd be more games based on The Matrix. Beyond Enter the Matrix and The Matrix Online, the short-lived MMO sequel to the original trilogy where Morpheus dies, did you know that? There's not been much outside of that one Unreal Engine 5 experience, but are we really calling that a game? While there's an obvious dearth of Matrix games that should be addressed, at least we'll always have the Matrix path of Neo to tide us over in the meantime. Meantimes aren't typically over 2 decades, but whatever. Sure, you made us fight the Merovingians' weird ant army for some reason, but you were still incredibly fun all the same. As the name implies, Path of Neo follows Mr. Anderson's journey from unassuming cubicle worker / harker to religious hero / simulation superhero across the first 3 movies. That includes some pretty key moments like the rescue of Morpheus, that brawl on the basketball court with about 1 to 500 different Agent Smiths, and even the fight with Bane outside the Matrix itself, not that Bane. Of course, Path of Neo expands on the story, offering a range of fun and original levels that people can enjoy. The gameplay itself is a bit janky and it's a bit ropey, but the progression of Neo's powers over the course of the game and the mix of brawling and third-person shooting makes Path of Neo a pretty balmy, pretty fun licensed game on the PS2 that you should really come out to play. Yay.
Want to see something heavy, Rembrandt? Show me some force.
Need to keep Chumper going strong. Bruises ain't no way to drink with Rudy.
Whoever at Rockstar pitched the idea of creating a video game based on the 1979 cult classic movie The Warriors was brave. Typically, film tie-ins would capitalize on the release of a recent movie or TV show to generate hype for the game. But Rockstar were simply hoping the success of Grand Theft Auto and then basically being the favorite developer of teenagers everywhere would carry The Warriors to profit. Did it work? Well, it wasn't quite as successful as GTA or Bully, but that didn't stop The Warriors from becoming one of the greatest licensed games of all time and a genuinely excellent companion piece to a renowned film. While The Warriors film follows the gang on the fateful night they're framed for murder, The video game picks up with the gang 3 months before that night, showcasing how they rose through the ranks of NYC's gangs. Given that the film displays only a small part of what seems like a massive world of gangs, The Warriors was perfectly poised to flesh out the wider world of The Warriors, making it an interesting addition to the story. The gameplay was fantastic too, focusing on gritty street fighting and grappling, and while the character models may obviously not be top of the line today, few developers knew the PS2 inside and out like Rockstar did. As one of the few licensed PS2 games quite easily available digitally on PS4 and PS5 at least, you should definitely check The Warriors out if you haven't yet. Next up, Culture Vultures presents Peter Jackson King Kong the Movie remake The Game. The gaming industry obviously isn't the only entertainment medium obsessed with remakes. Both Scarface and The Thing are remakes themselves, so what's another game based on a remake between friends, eh? Peter Jackson's King Kong remake isn't quite as beloved, especially when Jack Black gets about an hour too much screen time, but it did spawn the King Kong game, which actually managed to be pretty ruddy good. Shockingly too, King Kong the game accomplishes this without going down the obvious route of letting players cut loose as the big monkey for the entire runtime. Obvious and maybe a bit wise. Despite being called King Kong, the bulk of the game is actually spent playing as Adrian Brody's Jack Driscoll, who travels to Skull Island along with the rest of the crew to shoot a film. Most levels play out like a dinosaur shooting FPS, but with a few interesting mechanics thrown in, like being able to use fire or exploit the island's food chain to navigate around dangerous dinosaurs, making it more than just a brainless shooter that also looks really quite bloody lovely. My cat just shouted then, he's not so lovely. After a few levels playing as Jack, you'll switch to King Kong himself, brawling your way through the island's wildlife in some decent beat-em-up action, going back and forth between the two characters before climbing up the Empire State Building for a nice picnic and nothing else. Maybe you'll share a pizza. There had been dozens of Spider-Man games that had been released for plenty of different platforms before Spider-Man 2 found its way onto the PS2, and while some of them were generally decent, like, the last Spider-Man game, it felt like none of them truly nailed that all-important web swinging. Most games just had Spidey swinging on the concept of something, but that all changed with Spider-Man 2's physics and buildings-based web swinging. Here you need to find an anchor point to latch onto, and now you just can't imagine a Spider-Man game without it. The rest of the game is pretty good too. Spider-Man 2 follows the plot of the film for the most part, with Otto Octavius' no good experiment creating Spidey's most dangerous villain yet, though the game bolsters this plot with more villains for Parker to thwart, like Mysterio, Black Cat, Rhino, and Shocker. It also has way more Bruce Campbell, who's reprising his role from the previous game as the narrator/tutorial voiceover guy, which is always nice. You can also render people unconscious by pile-driving them off the top of skyscrapers. Admittedly, the beat-em-up combat here might be a bit ropey by today's standards, especially compared to the slick combat of the recent Insomniac games, but as a licensed film tie-in, Spider-Man 2 gives you a bit of everything. Bond games have pretty big, probably filled with traps or cyanide or something, shoes to fill, as how could you possibly compare to the FPS juggernaut that is 007 GoldenEye for the N64? After Agent Under Fire and Nightfire, EA finally found the answer. You don't even try, really. Ignore what came later. Before that, 007 Everything or Nothing moved away from the first-person shooting gameplay of its predecessors to instead create a third-person action-adventure, most similar to the PS1's Tomorrow Never Dies, which is pretty good. Underrated banger. Did it work? It's arguably the most beloved Bond game since GoldenEye, though EA would abandon the third-person shooting immediately afterwards to create that weird GoldenEye reimagining, so who knows. A brand new adventure for Bond set after Die Another Day? Not Another Day. Everything or Nothing explores Nanomachine's son, with Bond, who's voiced by Pierce Brosnan in his final ever Bond appearance, squaring off against former KGB agent Nikolai Diavolo, played by Willem Dafoe, the only man who has potentially done more shagging than Bond himself. Turns out right that old Russian Nicky was mates with Max Zorin, the Christopher Walken villain from A View to a Kill, making this a personal affair for Bond. The gameplay is your standard blend of third-person shooting, driving abouting, and gadget using, but just with absolutely crazy high production values and a lot of famous faces. Look, it's Maya! Everybody knows and loves Maya. If you're sick of getting your balls tickled while waiting for IO Interactive's take on James Bond, Everything or Nothing will tide you over for a good while, along with From Russia with Love 2. That's another great game. Outro, gang. Hello, how are ya? My cat came in, right, during the course of that, and not only did he interrupt my recording, but he came in, he punched my monitor, he flopped over, got his fluff all over my face, and I'm allergic to him again. I don't even know how I'm allergic to him. I thought I got over that. He's made me allergic to him again. He's a little terror. Which licensed games do you just generally recommend? It doesn't have to be for... Oh, he's back. He's back. Alright, babe. He's just lurking. I'll show you him. There he is. He's so fat. I'm a Jimmy for Cultured Vultures. He's been Dino, and he's been quite fat. It's been good to have you, and thanks for watching.